Justice may be blind, but can it block out the noise as well? Somewhere between spectacle and tribal rage comes the first ever criminal indictment of a president of the United States. There's Donald Trump's supporters energized for his return to New York City, and the glee of detractors, both sides earlier using the hashtag Trump mugshot on Twitter. We'll ask about the media circus, and we'll ask about the law. The hush money case brought by the Manhattan District Attorney could be the prelude to more serious charges of alleged election tampering in Georgia and inciting the storming of the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Two former French presidents have been convicted. Impeachments have become routine in places like Peru. But for the United States, this is a first. Why? More broadly, is this justice, politics, or entertainment? These are live images you're seeing of Trump's motorcade making its way from Trump Tower downtown. The lawsuit filed against Fox News for allegedly peddling election rigging lies because, as the plaintiff claims, it was good for ratings, raises questions over the blurring of lines between ideological battles and business interests. It's great for ratings. Is it great for democracy, though? Today in the France 24 debate, all eyes on Trump. Joining us from New York City, France 24 correspondent Jessica Le Masurier. You're in the thick of it downtown.
That's right. I'm standing in the park just in front of 100 Center Street, where there are a lot of protesters, both pro and anti-Trump protesters, who are flying their flags and hurling insults at each other across a barrier where police are standing to keep them separated. On the one side, there's a big flag that says, I can't say the word, please, Trump. On the other side, a big flag that says Trump or death. So that gives you an idea of the atmosphere here. There's also some people walking around on this pro-Trump side where I am, wearing those anonymous masks, holding signs saying things like, I will obliterate the deep state. So it's really quite a scene here, but I would say that although there are quite a lot of protesters, there are also an awful lot of news reporters. Right now I'm seeing a man dressed in an orange jumpsuit with a Donald Trump mask. And yeah, I can hear the two sides hurling insults at each other. People on the other side of the barriers, they're holding signs that say, lock him up, of course, making reference to the Trump's calls to lock Hillary Clinton up back in the day.
Yeah, Donald Trump, whose motorcade has made its way over to the east side and is now heading downtown. With us as well is Columbia University law professor Bernard Harcourt. Your books include The Counter-Revolution, How Our Government Went to War Against Its Own Citizens. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.
Great to be here, Francois.
From Phoenix, Arizona, Republican strategist Dan Hazelwood. Thank you for being with us.
Glad to be here.
And here in the studio, Lex Paulson, Executive Director of the Mohammed VI University School of Collective Intelligence. That's in Morocco's capital, Rabat. Thanks for being with us.
Good to be back.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation you have on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. Yeah, Donald Trump on his way downtown to be booked and fingerprinted. And, you know, as this happens, we're watching this spectacle unfold. When you woke up this morning, Bernard Harcourt, did you say to yourself this was a history-making day or not?
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. It is history, and I thought that by now we'd have seen the indictment. So you know, that's the big elephant in the room.
Because we don't know what the exact charges are against Donald Trump.
Correct. We don't know what the exact charges are, and that's going to make a big difference. What matters really are the felony charges. The misdemeanors for falsifying records, we know what that is about. That was just falsifying the records so that it looked like a legal retainer rather than a payment to silence the porn star. But the real issue is how those misdemeanors become felonies, and that has to be it has to be done in order to avoid another crime. And that's where everything's going to play out, really. And the intensity of the case will play out right there.
Is this a big case or not? There are critics saying, Bernard, that there would be more more important cases than this one?
Well, I mean, look, all cases are political. All prosecutions are political. The criminal law is entirely political. I mean, if you're prosecuting a homeless person for stealing toilet paper, that's political too. So, these are political decisions, and obviously it's political when you're prosecuting the president or the ex-president of the United States. But I don't think you can simply dismiss it on that ground, because the politics just pervade criminal law and prosecutorial decision making.
Dan Hazelwood, in the newsroom, people were asking me, they really elect district attorneys in the United States. It's an elected office, and you're either a Democrat or a Republican. You agree with Bernard that justice is political?
Well, I would adjust it slightly. I think his encapsulation of the situation before us is absolutely correct. And what is in this indictment is going to tell us whether this is very serious or ordinary serious, I guess is probably the two characterizations. But yes, we elect our prosecutors all over the country. We have a federal system. It's actually, the method of election varies by state and jurisdiction. It's quite varied. And that's one of the strengths and weaknesses of our system. Is the original idea is not to have political prosecutions that are contrary to the desires of the community. But you also want, to be able to elect prosecutors who go through and pursue justice. So that those competing interests are there, and that is a complication in this situation. We have the district attorney in Manhattan who won election in part because he promised to get tough and to prosecute Donald Trump. And that just adds to the overt layer of politicization to this. So that is a tremendous part of all of our prosecutions, but there is an ideal that we are less political. But, at the end of the day, we are humans making judgments.
And of course, where you're sitting in Phoenix, Arizona, you're very far from New York City. People just taking this in stride as entertainment they're watching on the television?
I think yes. It's one of the advantages of a giant country and being this far west. 3 time zones away. That the East Coast is far away, and it is a spectacle that people are paying attention to. But I think there's a large part of the country that has just decided we're going to wait to see what this is, and this is just more of the same. And to some people, that's exhausting to have more of the same. People are tired of that. To other people, this is an energizing reason to clear the bleachers and get involved in the political process.
Lex Paulson, is it a historic day?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us both were waiting for some accountability for Donald Trump for a long time, but also are very nervous, having seen him survive many scandals before. When I say us, I mean both Americans who believe in the rule of law, but Democrats like myself. Speaking to some of my friends today, there's nervousness, actually. It's not a day for celebration as much as a day of anxiety. We don't know what's in the indictment yet. I think that will, I sort of suspect, my intuition is that with these 30 counts, I think that there will be at least a couple surprises. And because I think that the novel legal case that Alvin Bragg is trying to make, tying a federal campaign finance violation to a state business falsification law is tough to make. It's frankly not a slam dunk case in a strict legal sense. But again, we don't know what other evidence this grand jury has seen, and we're about to find out.
I just connect me in.
A tough case, you're saying. Bernard Harcourt, did the district attorney make life difficult for himself with this case?
Well, I think, again, it's all going to turn on the crimes that he was trying to avoid. Now, most people, everybody thinks it's going to be the election fraud case that Michael Cohen pled guilty to. And if that's the case, indeed, there are some questions about the relationship between the state records and a federal crime. It would be novel. There's an outside possibility that nobody's talking about, that the crimes may have been related to the state prosecutions of Weisselberg and the Trump organization. In other words, it's possible, and here's why it matters so much what that indictment says. it's possible that some of those counts might be to kind of prevent or kind of to hide crimes that were at the state level, and that were the kinds of crimes that were prosecuted in the case of the financial accountant Weisselberg, or the Trump organization itself. So, and if that's the case, I think that the whole prosecution might take a different color, basically.
And just Bernard, is it possible that this has been kept secret and under wraps, contrary to what the former president's been claiming on social media?
Yeah, well, everybody's playing this very carefully, right? If you look at the timing of when the indictment comes out, it's clear that Bragg was playing Trump. Trump issues his warning, I'm going to get arrested on Tuesday. Of course, he's not going to get arrested on Tuesday. He then sends, he's playing it to the max as well. He gets into the grand jury someone who basically says Michael Cohen's not trustworthy at all. It looks as if it's falling apart. Bragg says that basically the grand jury is going to be taking a month off. Trump believed that he had prevailed in a way, prevented the indictment. All of his advisors leave Mar-a-Lago, and bam, right? The indictment comes down. So, there's a lot of gamesmanship on both sides in this case, and it's not at all impossible that some of those counts are going to be more connected to kind of New York issues of tax evasions, Trump organization, deals and whatnot, and corruption than we think.
And we're seeing Trump's motorcade, which is leaving the, for those who know New York City, the FDR Drive on the east side, and now heading downtown towards the central courts there that are over there, just a few blocks away, just off of Chinatown. Lex Paulsen, is this, January 6th was a test for democracy. The way this panel's describing it, this is what's happening today is not a test for democracy. Let's not oversell it.
No, we shouldn't. But I will say this, right? The calling for violence, which Trump has done in the past days against the DA, the picture of himself on social media with the baseball bat against the picture of the DA, saying that the judge hates him, calling for this uprising as he did in January 6th. This is not normal behavior. This is the kind of thing that in the history of New York justice, that underworld mafia figures are generally associated with this kind of behavior against the justice system itself. And remember, Republicans are supposed to be the law and order party, and now, of course, Trump is calling for,
Let's try to listen in and see if we can. I think that the cameras are at a pretty far vantage point, but maybe we can hear as the former president exits and enters the courthouse near Center Street there. Looks like we can see him from behind. He's walking in through a side entrance, so avoiding those two groups that are in front of the building. And as you can see, a very big security detail, New York City Police, the Secret Service, and the likes there. Donald Trump entering the building. Dan Hazelwood, do you agree with Lex Paulsen that some of the president's remarks are an incitement to violence?
Well, I'm not going to I don't have the specific statements in front of me, but yeah, he has definitely poured a lot of energy and fuel and tension into this situation. That's part of his objective in this process, to sort of polarize his supporters and get them energized. We have to remember this is a two-sided process, and one of the dangers we have here, and I fundamentally agree that violence is out of bounds and should be out of bounds on all sides, but we have this sort of harmonic resonance between both sides, where one side sees an action by the other and then chooses to escalate the rhetoric, and it just is a harmonic resonance escalating both. So whether it's jumpsuits or things with baseball bats, people are getting out of control. And that's not a good thing. And what's frustrating, as our legal colleague here pointed out, is we actually don't even know what's in this indictment and whether this is serious or gravely serious. So there's a lot going on here, and the president, of course, is using this for political advantage, to try and help his presidential campaign as part of this process.
Yeah, and he's been able to raise funds in the process in the past couple of days. And what we are seeing is that Donald Trump's support has even gone up amongst the Republican faithful. The prospect is that courtroom drama, this one and perhaps other criminal cases, again, could play out from now all the way through November 2024 and the next presidential election. Catherine Viet has more.
As the legal net tightens on Donald Trump, he continues to proclaim his innocence. On his Truth Social platform, he's called the investigations politically motivated and a witch hunt, a message that his supporters are taking to heart.
This is all lies, this is all BS. Alvin Bragg and all these Democrats, that's where we belong. They belong in jail and prison. That's where we all belong. They ruined this country. This country is like a sinking ship, just thanks to them.
If he goes to jail for this absurd charge, then our country is over. The United States of America is dead. We just wrap it up like the Soviet Union did. We're finished. We don't exist anymore. This is an absurd. This is a travesty of justice.
Trump has managed to transform his court case over hush money payments to a porn star into a fundraising bonanza and an opportunity to grow his power base. Trump's senior advisor Jason Miller said the re-election campaign has raised a record $8 million since the indictment was announced. As Republican allies and rivals alike back him, Trump has seen his approval rating among Republican voters soar. The first poll post-indictment by Yahoo News YouGov showed Trump with a 26-point lead over Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. 57% of Republican voters say they would choose Trump in the GOP primary, while 31% said they would back DeSantis. Compare that to 2 months ago when both men were polling neck and neck. While the historic indictment might not jeopardize Trump's political future, it could hurt his chances to take back the White House. Trump still has to win over independent and swing voters, many who say they're tired of the chaos and drama that surround the former president.
Dan Hazelwood, we're 9 months away from the first primaries, but can it be said that the Manhattan District Attorney has killed Donald Trump's competition?
No, I think that's going too far. We are in an incredibly fluid state of politics, and we were actually 8 years ago when you and I were talking about the 2016 primaries, where almost every week I was coming in and we were talking about who was the other alternative this week to Donald Trump. It's clear that Trump is the front runner for the Republican nomination right now, and there's going to be a rally around effect. But how does that go on for the next 30 days from now? Because this will ebb, this media frenzy will ebb. And we know, DeSantis and his allies are raising, about 4 times as much money as Trump is now claiming to raise. They've raised in preparation for this primary campaign. So what this is this is like the signups for the beginning of the football season. This is not even, we haven't even gone onto the field yet to see how these players are going to perform. So this is super early in the process. One of the things that, as a political practitioner, I would sort of tell your audience to, when you look at polls, when you have a highly well-known incumbent, who doesn't have an opinion of Donald Trump? What we say is what you see is what you get on poll numbers. So Donald Trump is really in a race where I think the number that was just quoted was 57. So that means that when it becomes a one-on-one race, which that is why he managed to win in 16, is he didn't really have that. But if it becomes a one-on-one race, that immediately shrinks to a 57-43 race. And that starts to be very close, and our politics are very fluid. A lot can happen. Trump is also showing more weakness in Iowa and New Hampshire polling right now, which are first in our process for the Republican nomination. So we got a long way to go. And I would say, I would sort of advise people, calm down. This is going to be a long process, both legally here, what we see unfolding today, and in the political process. We got a long road ahead of us.
But as long as he's in court, he's able to paint himself as the victim, right, and keep the attention on him.
Well, that's been his strength. He has been keeping the attention on him, and he loves that. And that has been his political strength. So this is definitely a boon to him in the short term. But part of his weakness, particularly amongst general election voters, is people are tired of this process. But right now, we've got more cameras around that courthouse than we do at the Olympics, right? This is the almost global event, shockingly. And he loves that. He's slated when he returns home to Mar-a-Lago tonight. He's going to give another speech. He's going to rev this up. But where are we a week from now? Does he keep this going, or does this tidal wave of press, which was his big asset in 2016, this is what he crushed all the other Republican candidates with, does that start to peter out, and does it not have the legs that it did in his upcoming race this year?
Yeah, more cameras than at the Olympics. Some likened Donald Trump's return on Monday to New York City to a white Bronco moment with the presidential motorcade when it made its way, this is scenes from yesterday, making its way to Manhattan from LaGuardia Airport under the eye of helicopter television crews. The scenes reminiscent of ex-American football star O.J. Simpson, who was tracked on the L.A. freeway before his 1994 arrest, and that was in a white Bronco. Hence that saying. Bernard Harcourt, do you agree that people are wary of all this, and that once the frenzy dies down, Donald Trump is not on such sure footing when it comes to securing the Republican nomination?
Yeah, I agree entirely with Dan. I mean, it's a long ways away, not just the nomination, but the election as well. I mean, we're 19 months to the election, and a lot's going to happen. Now, mostly he's probably going to get indicted in Georgia, right? That's probably coming next. And then there's possibly going to be the indictment for the January 6th, possibly for the classified documents, maybe not, but pretty sure the Georgia indictment will come down pretty soon. And so he's going to be facing multiple prosecutions. And at that point, frankly, I mean, I think his goose is cooked. Now
you say that, but in 2016 they said his goose would be cooked, and then he creamed the competition in debates.
Well, it's not just a question of debates. I think it's in this situation, it's a question of whether at some point there's a tipping point, and people in the Republican Party just simply say, okay, there's too much drama here. There's too many criminal prosecutions. And do we really want our nominee to be running on this image, right, of the New York courthouse?
If I can jump in on there, that is why the content. Sorry, jumping in. That is why the content of this indictment that comes out that we haven't seen, because there's been leaks and speculation, but what is in there becomes so critical. Because if this is about misdemeanor charges that have been exaggerated to be felony charges, as the Trump campaign has suggested, then that's going to redound to Trump's political benefit and probably his legal benefit to a degree. The law is somewhat immune to public opinion. But if these are perceived as weak charges, people are going to get nervous. If they are robust charges, if there's new information, then that's going to probably lead to greater problems for Donald Trump. So there's a lot riding on when that indictment becomes unsealed.
A lot riding on when it becomes unsealed. And if you're just joining us on France 24, we just saw the former president of the United States make his way from Trump Tower to Center Street downtown, and the courthouse where he's due to be arraigned. A first for a former U.S. president. Donald Trump, according to the French news agency AFP, calling the hearing, quote, surreal as he headed in. Let's cross to Jessica Le Mazurier, who is downtown there. Jessica, Donald Trump inside now. Does it feel surreal?
Yeah, I would say it does. There was an extremely surreal moment about 5 minutes ago or so when you could hear helicopters. Actually, I can still hear the helicopters buzzing. And then the crowd started to make a lot more noise. And then I think it was at that point that Donald Trump came out there and he held up his fist there at the entrance to 100 Center Street to, show sort of, I suppose, a gesture to his supporters who have gathered here. We were expecting him to perhaps say a few words, but we certainly didn't hear any words as he stood in front. But then I hear that you reported that he described it as surreal.
Yeah, Trump waving to his supporters. And Jessica, there was, all this talk, the mayor of New York City warning against rabble-rousers, that there would be big demonstrations, that there would be this sort of storming of New York City. It hasn't materialized.
Well, that has not happened. There's been very tight security, police on high alert. There are police all over the place here. There are barriers put up here, up at Trump Tower as well. And people were discouraged to come out and protest. And I think many Trump supporters, they may well have been afraid to come out and protest because, of course, there are all sorts of conspiracy theories going around about January 6th and what happened there. And many Trump supporters are sort of spooked at the idea of facing a similar situation. So I think really it's the most sort of hardcore supporters who came here today. That's certainly the impression that I'm getting looking at them. They're flying flags that say things like Trump or death on the one side, and walking around with signs about how this is all a deep state plot. So it's really the most fringe of the Trump supporters. And then the same on the other side with the anti-Trump supporters, the anti-Trump protesters who are gathered here. They seem to be amongst the most extreme, and they're sort of hurling insults across the barrier at each other, those two sides.
Lex Paulson, can we draw any conclusions from events unfolding, or is this just, this is just a bit of a spectacle?
I mean, it's a spectacle, and let's look at another headline that came in the news today. I'm going to say something maybe a little bit not quite as incredibly astonishing and amazing, but this is also a day when it was reported that 15 million Americans are about to lose their health insurance because of the expiration of a COVID-era Medicaid provision. Now, I just put people to sleep just saying that sentence, but these are 15 million people whose lives will be brutally affected by decisions that politicians make. And every day that Donald Trump is at the core of American politics is a day where spectacle dominates over substance. And frankly, our country America cannot go on indefinitely in a substance-free political sphere. At some point, there needs to be a shift, both in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, back to substance, because our healthcare is riding on it, our education is riding on it, our planet is riding on it, and the spectacle is engaging. It consumes
the cable news channels, be they from the left or the right, their ratings were slumping. This is great for them. So Donald Trump is fantastic. They prefer the spectacle, don't they?
They prefer the spectacle. And of course, this is their business. But the role of a democratic citizen is to be thinking about how we can make our country better, how we can solve problems, education, healthcare, environment, and Donald Trump, in his 6 months as a presidential candidate, has put forth precisely zero new ideas for how to make the country better. It's all about his resentments, his victimization, and his apparently taking this injustice of an indictment on behalf of his supporters. And as you said in the report, this is about raising money. This is not about any kind of principle, any kind of idea. This is always about him and his ability to squeeze another dollar from his most ardent supporters.
We didn't think, Bernard Harcourt, that many predicted Donald Trump would fade away after he lost the presidency. That hasn't happened. And now we see that while Trump faces a criminal case, there's another legal case, which you may say, I don't know, is it as important? Fox News faces $1.6 billion in lawsuits for repeatedly and knowingly airing false claims linking the company that makes the voting machines, Dominion, to unsubstantiated claims of mass fraud in the election in 2020. Fox News' Tucker Carlson, who see here, he hosts the highest-rated cable TV news show in the United States. Bernard, the Dominion's case argues that Fox personalities knowingly made false statements. But again, at the end of the day, is it a risk worth taking when you see how much money is to be made in what is, I guess, a little bit news and a lot entertainment?
Well, so just one thing, as your correspondent was talking from down there about the numbers, I just think, parking is hell down there, right? So I think that's probably limiting some of the protests, particularly that most of the pro-Trumpers have got big 4x4s.
And don't like public transit.
And don't like public transit. So, that's probably.
And they don't live near New York City.
And they don't live in Manhattan, yeah.
But the Dominion case is fascinating. The Dominion case is fascinating because of the discovery. I mean, it's one of the remarkable things about the American legal system. One thing that works through the legal system often is discovery, getting all of those conversations, texts, communications where Tucker Carlson and all the others are just deriding the president is a lot of ammunition. Now, how it played out exactly in kind of the pro-Trump quarters is less clear. It got very little play, obviously, on Fox News, and so it's not clear that it's drama that is going to preach to the choir more. It does raise significant questions of hypocrisy, but of course those claims are always kind of going back and forth. But I think that the question that you raised at the beginning, we thought he was going to go away. I mean, we didn't really think he was going to go away. I mean, he was different than every other president. He made clear that he wasn't simply going to fade away the way that Bush Sr. did, or that most presidents do. It's hard to imagine that it would have come to this point, though, this amount of spectacle with so much support on one side, so much schadenfreude on the other side. But I do think that at some point in time, a lot of Republicans are just going to think this is just not the way we want to be moving forward to the White House. I mean, he's going to be having to spend a lot of time on this criminal prosecution. I'm sure he's going to be indicted in Georgia. There's probably going to be something on the January 6th conspiracy, which is not. It's just going to be like, these federal prosecutors are very smart. They're not going to be claiming that he directed his mob to take the Capitol. It's going to be a much more subtle conspiracy theory where the taking of the Capitol was just an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. That wasn't the conspiracy. It wasn't to take over the Capitol. It's going to be to
stop the counting.
To obstruct the Electoral College,
which was that day certifying the election. Dan Hazelwood, when you look ahead to 2024. Again, it's about the following that the former president can still garner. And in this particular case, yes, the Senate Majority Leader has stayed silent. He was recently reelected, Mitch McConnell. But people like the new Speaker of the House, his potential rivals like the governor of Florida, they're falling in line and falling behind him in this particular case. Why?
Well, they're falling behind him because, this is not a moment where they gain political power by being the oppositional force to Donald Trump. Their gamble is that Trump will have his day and that when the attention ebbs, as people said, people will go back to the calculations of a lot of Republicans. We now know pretty definitively from internal party research as well as, non-aligned research that Donald Trump and weariness over Donald Trump cost the Republicans our victories in the midterms. We had a lot of close elections that we lost. And so there's a chunk of Republicans that are like, Donald Trump as quote unquote the winner is no longer his brand, not to a lot of Republicans. So the issue is when we go forward, do Republicans, they have to make a choice. Do they go with somebody who is fighting the Democrats and the liberals at every turn? There's Donald Trump, but there's also Governor DeSantis. There's other people who also claim to do that. And do they think that they can win with Trump? I've heard from a lot of people, that you talk to Republican candidates and they go door to door. and I hear this all the time all over the country from people. They like Donald Trump's policies. They were glad he was president. They still dislike Hillary and the Democrats, but they're ready for something new because they don't think he can win again. And if that becomes enough of an opinion, and we're seeing it right now strong in Iowa and New Hampshire, if Donald Trump starts to lose nomination contests, that will start to be a big bandwagon effect. Again, 8 years ago we were here, and this is what happened. He started to win, and it just becomes an accelerant. The reverse is true. If he starts to lose, it becomes an accelerant. That's all the politics of that. Obviously, there's the legal track that runs. And the other reminder I would have to your audience is, remember, the American legal system, usually, there's easy for either side, particularly the defense, to drag out proceedings. And Trump's history is wanting to drag out these proceedings. And that means that we're not going to have a legal answer on many of these fights for a very long time before we have these political answers.
The political answers. But you heard Bernard Harcourt point out that if these constituents are getting informed from sources that are pro-Trump, then Dan Hazelwood, again, does he have a leg up? And the question is, if people grow tired of him, then they vote for who?
Well, so... one of the American system of communications, going all the way back to our founding, the free press, the concept was to have many voices arguing so every interest group has their advocates. And that is very much, if anything, it's much more than they ever imagined 200 years ago. And so there are plenty of people who are advocating for DeSantis. So if you're a Republican primary voter, you are getting a lot of information about DeSantis. You're getting a lot of information about these other Republican candidates. And they are raising money to be able to deliver more information. And again, the history of the way this news cycles work, and this has been true for many, many decades. This is not just a Trump phenomenon. Winners attract more attention. So Trump is getting that. And as soon as it's perceived that somebody is his principal challenger, boom, you'll see a lot of attention. That's why you actually have Democrat-aligned organizations attacking DeSantis, because some of them think if the Republicans are stuck with Trump, they will lose the 2024 election. So there's all these interests in here, and you really cannot calculate. They did attempts to calculate in 2016, and I think in the primary they calculated there was $1 trillion worth of free news about the Republican presidential nomination contest. There's just a phenomenal amount of information that is going to come out. So to say that Trump has a monopoly on these news sources is not understanding the communications ecosystem at all.
All right, which you're saying has evolved. Let's talk for a second about the incumbent who hasn't declared, but certainly acts like he's running for re-election in 2024. Joe Biden seen here at a factory in Minnesota on Monday, offering the prospect, Lex Paulson, and this is a question people here in France ask me all the time, of the same matchup as in 2020. Two men, one in his 80s, the other in his late 70s, running against one another. Why does America pick these more elderly gentlemen?
Well, in this case, it was a combination of factors. Biden, of course, was very effective in making the case that he, in 2020, it was the most mature candidate, the most seasoned candidate to take on Donald Trump, and it ended up being a pretty effective argument. He won back just enough of the white working class voters that Hillary Clinton had lost catastrophically in 2016. And Joe Biden, he's the first nominee of the Democratic Party in a long time to not go to an Ivy League school. He is able to, he's from Pennsylvania, which is one of the most important states now electorally. And so Joe Biden, from an electoral perspective, makes a lot of sense, but he's 82. Even compared to 2 years ago, he's a little slower. I don't see any signs that he's not mentally up for the job because, frankly, he has an incredibly productive record over the last 3 years of producing real legislation from manufacturing to the climate bill and to the gun control. So Joe Biden has been a very effective president. Will he be an effective candidate in 2024? It's still a big question mark.
A big question mark. Bernard Harcourt, the whole world is watching, as we were saying, and Trump's detractors run worldwide, but so do supporters. People like Hungary's Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, who tweeted in English, "Keep on fighting, Mr. President." we are with you. And that's a reminder, I guess, of the stakes of what happens in the U.S. with this court case, with the election next year. They run worldwide, particularly as we have a war right now going on here in Europe. Again, Donald Trump's brand is more than American; it's global.
Right. No, it's global. It's been shared and used by others. I mean, if you look at Brazil, for instance, right? I mean, the way in which Bolsonaro also used the Trump playbook, the way that the Bolsonaro supporters used the Trump playbook with the January 8th uprising there compared to our January 6th. I mean, yes, it's a global brand. And so one of the big questions that we're asking ourselves now is how is it that it has become such a popular global brand? What is it about these times in particular that are making it seem so popular? And I think that's a difficult question to answer. I think it does have to do with large-scale shifting demographics during a shaky economic times, when the future of the United States, for instance, probably by 2044 will be a majority minority, and a lot of white men feeling that they're losing their privilege. And so I think that is a phenomenon that applies here in the United States. It applies as well in Brazil and in countries in Europe, and that's having global effects. We used to think of the international movements, internationalism, as being something about communism. Today, internationalism is really something about right-wing
populism.
Yeah,
I think that's a mistake. I think that's a mistake. And I think the mistaken analysis that you have there that assigns first politics to it is one of the reasons why many nations around the world are having trouble addressing this. What drove Donald Trump's support is actually very similar thematically to what drove the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States, which is a portion of the population that believes that the powerful and the elite do not care about them. And that is the global brand that we, and I say collectively all of us on this watching this program, most of our listeners here are probably closer to global elite than global working class. And the global working class believes, and you see this in country after country, that they have been forgotten by the powerful, that there is more interest in corporations making profits, there are more interest in the powerful being able to do and enjoy the lifestyles that they want to do, and that the quote-unquote everyday working person, and that is defined differently in every country, but it's a self-identification. It's not me identifying you, it's how somebody chooses to identify themselves. They feel that the system has stopped caring about them. And whether it's Brexit, whether it's the retirement battles in France, and you can go on and on through country after country, Japan, their aging problem, United States, our problems, Brazil, all these problems, it is a lot of people who feel that the elite, as defined as the movers and shakers politically and economically, have stopped giving a darn about them. And Biden's strength and Trump's strength, and frankly Obama, and if you go all the way back to Ronald Reagan, all these people of very disparate political views spoke to, I am going to try and help you. Now, policy specifics aside, that is a powerful emotion. And if we don't realize that is what is driving that everywhere, that right now it seems to be a center-right phenomenon, but you go to Central America, there's clearly center-left phenomenon versions of it. So we have to be very careful that this is, in American politics, we constantly remind ourselves, politics is downstream of culture. I would say to everybody, we're downstream of culture and economics here.
Let me first...
The problem with that narrative is, as you said, policies aside, right? I mean, what did Trump provide policy-wise? Tax breaks for the rich. I mean, so...
I'm gonna have to interrupt you because we're running short on time, and I do want to cross to Jessica Le Mesurier before we go, because Donald Trump, according to the original schedule, due to be arraigned in some 20 minutes' time. He's in that building behind you.
That's quite right. He's in there, but it's very hard for me standing here to know exactly what's going on inside. We are getting reports and rumours, but I wouldn't like to confirm anything from standing out here. What I can tell you is that out here, it's kind of like a crazy show. I've got, I don't know if you can see, a man who is dressed as Abraham Lincoln standing behind me. There's another woman wearing gold boxing gloves and doing boxing movements. A Trump supporter, not quite sure how the boxing's relevant. Well, perhaps, I suppose, because he came out and held up his fist and he says he's going to put up a fight and that he claims this is a witch hunt. And then the naked cowboy is also here. He's one of New York City's most famous Trump supporters, and he has been performing here. So really, a place that has attracted an awful lot of exhibitionists and pro and anti-Trump groups here, but really amongst the most fringe of those groups.
All right, plenty of attention-seeking behavior. What we do know as well, and you'll be covering it for us, Jessica, is that the Manhattan District Attorney will be speaking for the unsealing of that indictment. So important, as stated by Bernard Harcourt and Dan Hazelwood. I want to thank both of you gentlemen for joining us, one from New York, the other from Phoenix. I want to thank as well Lex Paulson, Jessica Le Mesurier, who will keep you updated downtown in New York City. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.